So yeah, we're going to focus on giving you a firm foundation in the flow editor, sort of baseline understanding of how sort of the different components piece together. And then we're going to dive in to build sort of a first flow. It's not going to be focused on a great story or some amazing insight, just get you sort of going with piecing together the ability to put steps together and to put together a data story and then the different modalities to present. And then from there, we'll basically go into our breakout rooms with our individual hosts. And then we'll actually go through the process of building that same flow together, as well as use that time to discuss the competition and people's data sets and things they're working on or want to accomplish in the next 2 weeks. Any questions about that or anything that people would like to bring up to the group? I proposed, that if anyone wanted to share any experiments or things they were working on that they thought might be interesting to share with the group, I'll give you the floor now. So speak now or otherwise, you'll hear more of me. Yeah. Okay.
Bunch of happy campers.
All good. Okay, so let's give you this foundation. I mean, I wasn't expecting too many things to have occurred, given that you didn't have any training yet. All right. So inside the editor, some of the basic areas to locate. One is the timeline, which is this section down here. Within this section, that's how you're going to select all objects in the scene. It's going to be how you toggle visibility of an object. And each swarm, think of a swarm as like a collection of dots. That's basically it. It's saying, here's dots, and each dot is a row of the data sets. Or if it's point per value, which we'll get into, each dot is a number or a count of whatever cell has that number. And we'll go through that. So for this example, we're going to use some data from our library. So we're going to select for training life expectancy. And so we have a few others to select from, but right away you're seeing every dot come into place here. Every dot is a row of that data sets. And this is what we're going to basically go through to transform from one perspective to another. And it's just going to give you sort of a baseline understanding of the context of how to piece together a story. So what I'll do is add a step, which is the same as adding a keyframe in an animation or a slide into a PowerPoint deck. Think of that, those are sort of like equivalents. And then within each of these steps, you have the ability to set the camera position, like what am I looking at? And then different attributes around like what chart type, what filters to apply, what colors. So everything is applied to that step. And so you can keep building step by step, basically a story with narrative, a narrative overlay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a scatter plot here. I'll put the year on the width axis. And on the height axis, I'm going to put life expectancy. And so right away, we see sort of this graph that I keep showing you guys over and over, which is life expectancy moving forward. Now, I'm going to apply one filter right away, which is that there is a column called country. And most of the time that has the country name, but we also have a calculated field called average. So this is something we calculated prior to. Yeah, is everyone able to see my screen okay? Or otherwise I can increase or do the regular screen share. If you let me know.
Looks good to me.
Yeah, I can see it okay.
You okay? Okay. So anyways, the wall in here, I can make this a little bigger. Let's make the okay. So now that we've set this up, the other thing we'll add is connections. So connections is basically a way to connect dots together. And we're going to connect these dots together when the countries match. And so we're showing just the average to start. So here we see the average life expectancy across time or across from 1800 till today. Now there's more interaction layers that we'll start to add, but let's go ahead and add another step here. And so now instead of looking at just the average, we're going to look at anything that doesn't contain the average. So everything else, basically. And then at the same time, let's actually go ahead and maybe group these by consonants. So we can see the different consonants represented in their own sort of domain. And so from here, there's other things we can do. So we can add a color scheme, perhaps based on the consonants, that will give some additional insight to this. And then there's more we can do. So let me add one additional step. And on this step, let's actually go and we will look at just, why don't we look at the continents for Europe. So when I do that, if I change this from continent to country now, I can see sort of all of Europe and life expectancy and how that progressed over time from 1800 till today. And within this, the other things to start to set up are some interactions. So one of those being on select, that when I click on a dot, I pull up some additional information. So when I add this interaction, I select which columns I want to show up. So I'm going to say I'm going to bring back the year, or the country and life expectancy and maybe the year. And so I will also add in some precision, so I don't want a huge number there. And I'm also going to add a character return so that they go to a new line. So now when I select a dot, it will show up as this label with an arrow connecting it to the dot itself. Now you can also change this to overlay text where you have the same capability, but it will show up based on whatever position you just find here. And so when I select it now, it will show up in this position and allow you to, we actually have the ability to edit fields as well, which we can get into. So in our small groups, we can go into some other details here, but this idea of, I add a step, I set the camera, I sort of filter and show what I want. I add levels of interaction into this is all part of this. Now there's other things we can do like adding maps because I do think this group is a little bit more advanced that likely will connect where we're looking, from one perspective to another and wanting to connect the data to on a map. And so let's actually do a map from regions where we will create a map and then connect the data to that map, plotting it to a specific country region. And so now we see all the dots in Europe. And there's more we can do to this where we can set an offset column. And one thing I've been really getting into lately is setting the offset to the actual year, defining the radius or how far from this point it will extend out, and then actually starting to use the scale of the size of life expectancy as an example to actually communicate the magnitude. So distance is time, and then magnitude is or the size of the dot is the magnitude of life expectancy in that year. So I don't know if it really works fully like this, but you're getting sort of the sense of some of the things you can start to experiment with. So I realize I covered a decent amount here, but the main thing to get used to is sort of this mechanism, adding steps, looking at different perspectives, and really understanding that a swarm is the collection of dots that you're basically moving around from step to step to focus in on different elements of the story. And that then you can add in text and other elements to actually narrate and annotate that story that I can point out something within this swarm and connect a dot to it and have that be part of the scene. So I'll pause there. I know I went a little fast to go through a lot, but I think this will hopefully help.
Quick question for you. Any limitations around how much, I guess you would say, keyframes you can add to that timeline?
Good question. So the max we've put, I think, is around 30 or 40. And then it just starts to run into performance issues because it basically pre-caches the position of each dot for every step so that as you progress through the presentation, and it's something we're working on so you can actually do really long animations and some other things there, but that is, you will start to run into performance issues after you get to a certain number, basically.
Sounds good.
Great question. And yes, on the choropleth, we do have the ability to, on maps, actually change the color of the map based on an attribute. So we can create a choropleth here, and we'll select the data source, also select the region, and we're going to need to basically say what to scale. And so we'll look at life expectancy, and we probably want to look just at 1 year, where the year is, I think this goes to 2018, so if I do 2017, it'll just be last year. So anyways, that's how you can basically use the same data set to I'll have to double check that filters, right? Now, but anyways, that's where you go to basically set the color of each of these regions. And so based on the map, so if you have a state map, you can use states to then create the chloropleth and put dots on top of it. So great question. Other questions here?
And how crazy can you get with the map, right? Does it need like geo coordinates? Can I just toss like cities in it? Like, you know, from an accuracy perspective?
It's based on, so for the most parts, this is actually a really good question where, let me just think of an example. A lot of the times how we, like if I show this globe view, the data set, the map itself doesn't have city data in it to know where to plot the city. And so the way you get around that is using latitude and longitude. And so we can go through in a little bit more detail, but there are like geocode ways to basically look up the lat long from an address or from a country name or things like that. And that's more or less the workaround if the region is not already in the map that we've loaded. And we're currently in production working on the ability to upload your own custom map. Right now there's a limited set of maps, but we can add custom maps as you see fits.
I'm just going to answer that just a little simpler way. There under the chart type, you can do either map to region or map to coordinates, coordinates being lat longs. The data set he's got here doesn't have the lat longs in it, and we can give an example, but the map to regions, basically we support, you know, the ISO 3-digit codes, the ISO 2-digit codes, the as many aliases of the country names as we could think of. It doesn't mean that we're going to get all exactly the way you expect. And so, but in our documentation, there is a descriptions of exactly how we match, what strings we're basically looking for to match countries around the world, as well as US states.
Gotcha.
Yep. And this is what the map from coordinates looks like. So manually putting the lat long ins allows you to be very precise, basically, with every position of the dot if it's not in the region. Any other questions? Yes, the location on the map. So if I click back on yeah, it's this country, it's the region column. This is where we selected the variable to know the location. So that's going to be the connector. Okay. So with that, any other questions or things to bring up or talk through, and open it up to Bill and Jason if there's anything you guys want to cover or highlight.
I want to get my team into building it themselves. So
yep.
Is there
nothing else from me right now, Michael? Thanks.
Okay. Great.
Is there any like transitions as you're kind of running through like visuals and things of that nature as you kind of tell that story from keyframe to keyframe?
Yeah, great question. I can tell that there's a lot of power in animation, and I will say that we're it's still progressing, but the controls you have are basically the duration.
Michael, first just click on the forward button so that they can see that everything is animating throughout the whole thing.
Yes, so it animates step to step here. So as I click the next button, it will animate to the next step automatically. So it always animates between steps for you. Now, the adjustment layer that you have is the duration. So it's actually hidden underneath advanced. So if it's in step details and then underneath advanced, that you have this attribute, which is the animation duration to the next step. So by default, we're just saying it takes 2 seconds to animate everything every time you move. But if you wanted, and I do this often where I do like a long animation that's like 15 seconds and a little more dramatic, that actually can work quite well to basically introduce countries slowly and a little more dynamically. So that's how you control the speed. And then there's one other attribute within the swarm definition itself is a section called animation, where you can basically define how long each item takes. So I won't go I'm not gonna go too far into detail, but basically play around with this little section too, and you'll start to see some other ways to basically animate between steps.
Got it.
Yep. Great question. Cool.
One more question.
Yep.
The connection, when you define the connection, you defined it based on same country, right?
Yeah.
But how does it know to connect adjacent years within that country?
Great question. And this is actually something that I'll have to double check with Jason, but currently it's based on the order in which it's in the data file, which means that sorting your data file is important based on what you're going to put on the axes. Now, keep me honest there, Jason. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. So sorting by year, and that's something that we're working on sorting right now, so that you don't need to sort the data set, but that is going to be how the connection lines basically know to go next to one another.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And cool. All right. So with that, I'll go ahead and create the breakout rooms. If you can go ahead and go to the room you were in last time. Oops.
David, Graham, Joe, you're with me, and anyone
Team
else?
Pandas.
Pandas.
All right. We got pandas. What was it?
I think Evelyn is in my group.
Bill, what's your team name?
Oh, gosh, I don't think we came up with a name, and I can't remember what Sierra put in there.
Okay, that's okay. I don't
I
think.
feel like something space themed is optimal.
Okay, well, I'll just put Bill for now, but we can
Okay.
update these, and I think our team needs to too. So, all right, rooms are open. If you guys